as much hatred. It appears to be in people's voices on both sides. I mean, the reason I'm watching the debate this evening, I am a Republican. I do plan to vote for Donald Trump. However, I am watching the debate. I want to hear policy on both sides. I had planned to vote for
I
Jimmy
don't
Carter years
understand.
ago,
I still
and
can't get it.
when
Why
I changed
people?
my mind was
Can
the
you hear
night
me? Oh,
before I voted
can you hear me?
when the economic report came
I
out,
can hear you.
Hey,
and
you
it
can hear me?
continued
Yeah.
to trend down.
I
I mean,
still,
I know it's just.
Yeah,
Here's the deal. There,
Hey,
for all that this guy has done, we have
even though
not
I am a
heard
Republican,
policy since like
I'm
when?
an American.
no policy.
Besides
So, Tony,
And
what,
wanting
could
to
the vice
deport
president
like 10
convince you to
million
vote for
people and
her?
all this others.
And
Like,
if
I don't want
so,
to hear that.
how?
Like, just
she could if
say what you want to say.
she shares policy. All of the stuff that they have been pushing,
It's
the
just
liberal
interesting to me
agenda,
that
as
people like
far
this. He says
as
he sees
the
all this stuff,
electric
no policy, but
vehicles.
yet he still wants to vote.
I have
And
a
always
brother,
on the Trump
and
side,
his
they always
neighbor
said there's
has
anger
one,
on both sides.
and he could fill up
No,
his
the
vehicle
crazies are
4
only
times
on
a
one
month
side.
That level
for what
of
it costs him
hate
to charge his
and
vehicle.
bigotry is
One
It's
on
night,
only
one
on
side.
one side.
he said his
That's
electric
one
bill is
sided. Like,
totally
please don't make it sound as if
electrical
everybody's
to
doing it. Everybody's not
absolutely
doing it. Everyone
No.
is not
bankrupt
running a
people.
campaign
And so
on
pushing for these policies,
hating other
uh,
people and
I
keeping
want
other
to hear
people
more
down. I mean,
mainstream
people. That's
policies
not
Okay,
how
so
this is
Tony,
running.
That's right.
do you
But it's
Hey,
interesting to
Bryson.
say, I want to hear about
believe that
policy.
that
Well,
New York Times poll that we showed you
bruh,
is
what
accurate
you
then?
waiting on?
Essentially a tie in your state?
Well, I tell you, it's almost
I
ready.
believe
I
so.
can't wait.
They are
I'm
very
I'm
rural
I'm almost
areas
like
and they're very
scared
safe
and kind of like
areas.
I have
And
butterflies
most of
and
those
Really?
areas are more
yes, I get
heavily
crazy when it comes to
populated.
politics like this.
But
It's the
I
Super
do
Bowl to
think North
me.
It's the
Carolina
Super
is
Bowl.
stepping up,
I'm working on
and that
some
is
Tony,
content over here,
I want to show
clearly.
you in totality that
Um,
it's not
You're
just the New
working
York
so
as you
Times
stay,
poll.
as you hear.
working
I
on the
hear.
content. I got
Post
myself some
poll, and
wine.
I got my
tweeted out
water.
by
I just finished
Listening
taking
to
my
this guy
vitamins.
speak
Will
literally
Schaffer
drives me
showing
insane.
that
It's just
small changes in their polling model. North
Look at this.
Carolina
Harris
moves from a
is in North
small lead
Carolina
from
up
the former
4.6,
president to a
Nevada
tie, while
5.1. So
Pennsylvania
I mean,
tightens
she's
a
doing
bit, but
good if
a
we can
few
just keep it
close,
going.
high-quality polls. Beyond that, not much movement going into tonight's debate. So there are the swing states and
But
Washington
my question
Post
is this:
polling. We showed
if
you
people
earlier
are still
the New York
waiting
Times polling ahead of
to
tonight's
hear or
debate,
say something,
both
I'm thinking, so
political
what's the
candidates,
opposite
the
of what
voters,
you
the
like?
media
What
will all
exactly are
be
you
looking
waiting
at
to
the
hear and
polls
see?
Yeah.
post-debate
Because
as
this
well.
guy has shown you who he
Ernest
is
in
time and
Georgia,
We
time
know
again.
who
Like,
he
caller.
is.
he's out here talking about locking up people if he win. I mean, it's
Ernest, you
not
with us in Georgia? We're listeling to you.
not uplifting. It's chaos.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, what do you want to hear from the candidates tonight?
Yeah, I would like to hear our ex-president apologize for January the 6th.
Oh,
Even though
He ain't gonna
said that
apologize.
it'll be a cold day in hell
All right, I'm going to leave it there. The ABC
before
debate
he
will begin. We'll take you
apologizes.
there
A
now.
cold day in hell with blizzard conditions.
Blizzard.
Historic race for president
Oh,
upended
here we
just
go.
weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special. The most
Here we are,
consequential
guys.
moment
Hey,
of this
Rushion
campaign.
is in the
Kamala
building.
Harris.
Jazzy's in the building.
We will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face. Historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing: 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National
And if you're on
Constitution Center.
Instagram,
This is
you'll
an
get a
intimate
better
setting for 2 candidates
show
who
here.
have never
If
met.
you want to come over
President Trump
to
won the
our
coin toss and
YouTube
chose to
channel.
deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage: Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Hi, Alicia. Cecilia,
Kamala
how are you?
Harris. Accept the debate. Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and
There he
Hispanics,
goes.
and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden let into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump, will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. Just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences. Like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only
He doesn't
president ever.
understand what a
China was
tariff
paying us
is.
hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what
Bring it
that
home.
requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job. but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years, they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe
Bring it home.
that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody
crazy.
else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it
Well,
came
I
to your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer the
Wade,
question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of
If it's
Virginia.
if it's after
The
birth,
governor
it's
of
not an
Virginia said,
abortion.
we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and
Oh
border
my
security. We know
goodness.
it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
And we all know that
it's
was a
shame.
lie.
As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by
Wait, see, they
the
can't
people
shut him
that
up.
lived there.
They can't shut him
Again,
up.
the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank you. Because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
He's
Let me continue on
he's
immigration.
just
It was what you wanted to talk
he's-
about earlier. So let's get back to your deportation
he's
proposal
crazy.
that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice
to
President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about
He did not go
democracy.
there.
I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump,
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
Cut his
that
mic
went
off.
nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work, to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on longstanding work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down. And name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please.
Hmm?
Does that sound familiar?
Oh,
She went out,
he just wanted to use that line.
she went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a lot
These
of
are not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those,
you.
David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come
He won't
she's
give
not
it
doing
up.
anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next
Exactly.
issue.
Turn
Really
off
brings
his
us,
mic.
This into focus. Truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I
Are
said
you-
that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in
No, I
2020?
don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was
He
said
said, did I
sarcastically.
say that?
Look, there's so much proof.
can't
All you
take
have
it.
to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge
Republican,
looked at it.
and said there
They
was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. He got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But
Mr.
he
President.
got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And
Oh
when
my
she ran,
gosh.
she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time
I
is up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to
I don't know why they're not
Israel-Hamas
turning off
war
his
and the
mic as the
hostages were
agreement
still being
was.
held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one.
He's
She
been
hates
wrong on
Israel.
all his
At the
predictions.
same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national
Why
security
is
by
his
allowing
mic
every
on?
nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate
Woo,
from the National Constitution
baby.
Center right
Whoa.
here in Philadelphia.
Holy moly.
I got a whole bottle waiting on me because I'm gonna need this bottle tonight. I'm gonna need it.
This is, first of all, I don't understand why his mic is not off as they agreed.
Yeah.
So they keep turning it back on. Like when he asked them to turn it on, they're turning it on. They should just leave it off and make him stick to the point.
Yeah, stick to the rules.
Yeah, it's off, but they keep turning it back on.
I am shocked that however, I will give them credit. They are doing a good job for the most part of moderating this debate. This is how a debate is supposed to go. What we saw on CNN was a travesty of what debates are supposed to be. This is, I would say 90% doing well as moderators of this. ABC is doing good. What do you guys think?
Right.
I'll
Before you
go.
go, guys that are on Instagram, come on over to our YouTube channel. You can just go to Ron Lewis Photos. Come on over to and come into the discussion because you guys are talking a lot. I'm looking at all what you're saying and sharing on Instagram, but we can't respond to you because you're over there. Come on over to YouTube and be a part of our community and let us have this great conversation. Okay, Elise, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think like even with the mic on, one of the things, the reason his team wanted it off was because of stuff that he will say.
Yes.
And he has been saying some things that we all know that make sense. He worships these dictators. You know, the one guy is like, oh, he loves me. You know, all these people love me. And Putin just endorsed it. He knows Putin is not endorsing Kamala Harris. He knows they're friends. They talk. And the only reason it happened. And then he never answered that question about the border, right? Why did he have those people do that? He hasn't answered. He didn't answer the question about what he would change, if he would change anything from January 6th. All of those things. But he, like one of the comments in here, he's doing his dog whistles around racist stuff and talking about the immigrants. But she said it. She said, you're going to hear a lot of talk about immigration.
Yes. And he just kept going on.
Right.
On.
And so she was prepared for that. And I think what she's doing is getting under his skin. Like she is putting it on him. She's letting people, she's talking about him, which is something he hates. He doesn't, and then she chuckled. You know, he doesn't like anybody to laugh. But she did chuckle a little bit.
Yes, she gave a little chuckle. But my thing is also, I was shocked that he doubled down on a story that was a lie in Ohio about the Haitians
Eating
and
dogs.
the dogs. I
Really?
mean, that was crazy. The man even said he was lying. He was making it up. He just made the story up, and it was
Right.
It was broadcast on the news, and for those that are political junkies, it
Right.
was brought out in the news around, I think, midday today, and it
Right.
was saying it was a hoax.
Right. And I do respect the moderators for moderating,
Yes.
like bringing it to the fact, doing the fact checks right there, calling them out on stuff. That's what
They
has
did.
to happen, and they're not being easy on her either. Like, okay, so these are the things you said. Why did you backtrack? And like
That's
she
right.
said, you talking about 2019, but in 2020, she said she said she would support fracking. She said that when she was running,
It's
when
right.
she was running as a possible presidential candidate.
I see. Celia says, "I love the fact. I love the fact checking they are doing. Yeah, they're doing good.
Isla.
Aisa. Hey,
Isla.
Aisla. Sorry, my bad. Aisla. I'm sorry.
It's cool, but it's
Aisla. I'm sorry, Aisla.
Isla.
Thank you, Aisla. I know Aisla.
I agree
Yes,
with
yes.
with Ms. Elise. The moderators are actually moderating. That's awesome. She is playing her opponent fairly well. She knows how to get under his skin. He takes the bait like, I mean, hook, line, sinker. It doesn't take him long to get him off base. The idea that women are having babies at 9 months and then aborting them, bruh, that's not no.
That's
even
called
close.
murder. That's
Like,
called
what are
murder.
you
That's not called
talking about?
abortion. That's called murder. If you
That's
are going, first of
murder.
all, if the baby is been born, that's not an abortion.
No.
And you know, the unfortunate part is, like, there's been some women who've been forced to carry stillborn babies
Yes.
until they're born, like until for long periods of time. And so, you know, I think there was, you know, his thing on abortion, all of a sudden there's all this flip-flop, right? So he talks about flip-flop. He's flip-flopping. And I'm supportive of IVS. No, what happened was when Alabama said what they said, and those Republicans down there saw how those people reared up, they were like, oh my goodness, this is gonna kill us. And so they went back and changed it, and so did he. And then for and them calling them out, her calling them out on the fact about the states where the people, when given the opportunity to vote, have voted to have women's rights in red states and blue states. Ohio's a red state. He's like, Ohio, yeah, they voted. And Arkansas, no, I wish she had said something about what Arkansas recently did, where the people signed the petition, or what DeSantis is doing now.
Yes, going to their homes.
Going to these people's homes because they signed a petition. Doing what they do in fascist regimes.
Yeah.
But that January 6th, or the lack of a January 6th answer, he's like, oh, it wasn't me. I mean, I was called to do a meeting.
He blamed everyone else.
It wasn't me. It's like, cut it out. It was a very yes or no answer. Just say, yes, I regret. No, I don't regret.
But then also when he said, when they talked about, he did this week said that he lost.
And he said it several times.
He said it several times.
And it wasn't a joke.
No.
He said it several times. And then,
Okay,
but the point was, he said, did I say that?
He said, did I say that?
Did I say that?
Here we go.
Steve Urkel.
Want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president. Okay. They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war? Yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin? And would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. and the war started 3 days later.
Vice
And
President,
that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. but I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
And
on.
these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read
took
that
the
she was
bait.
black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's
Right.
up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything
Could they
like it.
please
They're
cut his mic
destroying our
off?
country. And they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said,
took
well,
the
if they
bait.
pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. but they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly.
Hey,
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump,
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond.
No,
President Trump,
No, the
President
former
Trump.
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
I
We're
just
gonna
need to
move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Pass this
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue
Well,
that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of
mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing
No, they
jobs
didn't.
this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. they're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both
What
of our
the
candidates.
hell?
An historic night, this
What
ABC
the-
News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Well,
So so I'm looking at Threads, right? And this guy says no such thing as late term abortion, but Kamala did just murder a 78-year-old baby.
That's hilarious.
oh
Hilarious.
my gosh. I mean, you can tell this guy is so it is profoundly
He's
ignorant.
unhinged.
He is unhinged. I mean, she has got under his skin like none other. He cannot work with her. He cannot work because he has no truth. He keeps spinning the same rhetoric that he used in 2016. These are the same things he was saying in 2016. He has no new material.
Which is what she said, the same old playbook. Like she said that several times. And plus, you know, people have to, when people talk about who she is, this woman was a prosecutor.
Yes.
She takes those notes because that's what she used to do with people on the witness stand.
Yes.
To be able to use their words. And that's what good debaters do. You use their words. You use what they say. You bring those facts out. And I think that, you know, and he is so frustrated by it. And he's fighting, y'all know he's fighting with all his might.
Yes.
Not to talk as crazy as he always talk. They work with him to try to not talk as crazy as he always talk, but he still says crazy stuff. And so, you know, and trying to bully people, like telling her, oh, to be quiet twice.
Yes.
She looked at him like, all right.
She
But
gave him
I
the smirk.
like the fact that she was like, what I'm going to do, even though you said that you wouldn't let me speak on it, I'm going to address those 2 points.
That's right.
I'm
She brought it back
gonna
home.
tell you this, and let you help you understand. Tim and I own guns, so we're not
That's
trying
right.
to take people's guns.
Better tell him.
So this fracking, that you know you're lying. So just as she said, I'm going to answer that, and then she went right into the Affordable Health Care Act. And as Jazzy said, I'm glad that she stuck with calling it Affordable Health Care, because that's something I fought for the last, I don't know how many years, to get even our own people. Stop calling this Obamacare. It's the Affordable Health Care Act.
Exactly.
And the reason that so many people were saying that they didn't know what was happening, especially Republican people, they didn't understand that Obamacare, their people kept calling it, was the Affordable Health Care Act that they asked their people not to cut.
True. True.
And they didn't understand it. So I appreciate that she called it what it is and kept it there. And the fact that she had that great transition to, I'm going to address this, but then went right back into what she had to say.
And I also love the fact that because, you know, I couldn't shut my mouth, so I had to say it. It wasn't him that kept the Affordable Care Act in place. It was John McCain when they tried to get rid of it for the 60th time.
Right.
He said, as his last thing he did in Congress.
Right. And he was so confused, right? Oh, John McCain fought it for all these years. No, John McCain showed up in the middle of the night.
And he wasn't feeling well that night. John McCain wasn't feeling well that night and said, wait a minute, I'm coming.
He showed up in the middle of the night.
He showed up. He
to do
showed
what
up.
he had to do, and he knew he had to do it because this man is insane. He couldn't. And I like the fact that they forced him
Yes.
to admit that he does not have a current plan.
Yes.
He has no plan. He
Right.
had no plan when he was in office.
Right. He
had
didn't
no
have a plan.
When he had no he still has no plan.
9 years.
He's had 14 years, sorry, well, 12 years to come up
Right.
with a plan.
Yeah, he still does not have a plan. They have a plan in Project 2025.
Well, they do have a plan.
Yes.
It's not
To
his
destroy
plan.
some
It's
stuff.
Project 2025 that he is submitting to if he becomes
He is
president.
hilarious, but
But he's a joke. I
he
mean,
is.
and for those out there, it's not to go nuclear on these folks,
She
those
did.
that don't see a difference between the two of these individuals, and you think you have a problem with figuring out who you want to vote for president.
Oh yeah, and she wanted. Look,
I ain't gonna
agree
call
with
no
Anthony.
names, but
Look, I agree with Anthony and a couple other people. She wanted to cuss a couple of times.
oh yeah, she wanted to go in. She was like this,
and then she said,
and then she okay.
"This ex-president," and her and the fact that she worked on the zinger parts. No, you're right. I'm not Joe Biden, and I'm most certainly not Donald Trump.
There you go. There you go.
You gotta
She
keep
is
them in
holding
there.
her own. Here we go. They're back.
Yes.
And
Based on the past and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine, we're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to
He's
Afghanistan.
crazy.
What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Wow. Wow. That was.
Oh, Lord have mercy. I had 3/4 of a bottle, y'all. Lord bless. It's like, God, that was a good thing I'm not doing anything heavier than Cabernet tonight. God,
Get my water.
Jesus Christ.
I got my water here too, Elise. I kept drinking. I did
No.
have to take my vitamins before I started. This was. Now, I dare anyone to say that Trump won this debate. One. Number two, I dare anyone to say he gave anything about policy, because he
Nope.
gave nothing.
No policy.
He gave no policies whatsoever. There was nothing that man gave us tonight. Nothing.
Mm-mm.
Right. He didn't give not. That's one thing I put in there. He didn't say any policies. All he did was still trying to attack, divide. And as she said, he wants to divide the country. He wants to put all these negative things out there for divisive reasons.
Yes.
And so, Lord, I wish she had won the toss so she could have gone last. But that's
exactly.
Okay, because she could have really ripped him a new one at the end. But she did. But she did what she needed to do. People keep saying they haven't heard her policies. She stated her policies at the end, which is what she needed to do. And let him go and do his meltdown and go and lie, because people already know that the data is out there. Biden has had the strongest presidency in the last, 60 years?
60 years. More
60
legislation passed in 2 years. 2 years.
Right.
Than in 40 years.
Right. The infrastructure bill, all those things that
The
they
infrastructure bill, the chip bill, the chip bill,
the chip
infrastructure.
bill. She did mention. Thank God she mentioned that.
Yes, she did. But I thought she was going to do more about the chip bill when they were talking about China.
Right.
When they talk about all the jobs going to China, I said, wait a minute, they just opened an amazing plant in Ohio.
Well, see,
chip factory.
That's the reason he said that about China, was because she said that they brought the chips back to the United States from China. They were producing them here and not get them from China like that. And so that was why he said what he said. Of course, it wasn't true.
Yes.
And people know, the people who are getting those jobs, the people who are out there where they're building these factories, they know what's happening out there. They know what they're getting to do.
But you know what's crazy though? The unfortunate thing is that some of those people in Ohio, they got these beautiful new jobs that are coming there they are getting, because one, they're building this factory, and they're getting these new jobs without needing a college education. These jobs were intended to make sure they were able to get these jobs without a college education. And but unfortunately, the people will still vote against their own interests.
But we know that. I mean, okay, so think about it. She's been the nominee how long? Like a month and some weeks?
Yes.
And they have been, like they do most women, asking for blood, sweat, and tears immediately, discussing and saying that I haven't heard her policy. I don't know what she stands for. We've had this guy for how many years? You already know what he stands for. What exactly are you looking for? Call a spade a spade. If you're not voting for her because she's woman, black, and everything else, just say that. But don't try to fool yourself and saying, well, I haven't heard her policy. This guy didn't mention one thing about policy, not once. I don't know what practice he did as a person who did debate in high school. I don't know who helped him get prepared for the night. Don't know.
And what they what he wasn't crazy enough to do, he was, when they put that out there about her race, he knew better.
That's right.
He did.
I don't care.
Commend him. He did hold himself fairly well.
But he had a little bit in there though. He said a little bit near the end.
Just a little. He had
Just
a
a little bit.
lips. But he did.
So you
It
better
didn't
not
take
go
much
out there
to
because they
be
told
rattled.
that.
Say
She didn't let him off the hook.
No, she did not.
He went
And I
down
love
what he
that
did
she
to Obama.
And I love that she was able to take that question because she wasn't going to go into the race bait question.
Right.
She said, let me explain to you what he's doing. She took that. This was what I love. Well, obviously, she's an attorney. She's a DA. I mean, the woman has done amazing. She has amazing credentials.
Mm-hmm.
And they did on on Morning Joe this morning. They did a experience chart, and they had the presidents from JFK to Biden,
Right.
and then Kamala, and everyone had only 1 or 2 stacks. Kamala will be the most experienced person ever elected in the last 2 centuries.
Right.
Yeah.
She comes into office with her DA experience, being a lawyer, being what was it? Not only the DA, but the in charge of California, the Attorney General. Then she was a senator, and she's a vice president,
right?
And she would
all
be president.
Of the skills, right? But what I liked about her response to the question about her ethnicity,
yes,
was she did not make, and she refused. She will never address it about her.
Yes.
What she took it to was his record.
Yes.
As it related to Black people.
Yes.
His housing discrimination. You didn't see him trying to get back on that mic when she said that, did you?
Yes.
What he did with now I call him the exonerated 5. When
yes.
she talked about that. Then the whole Bertha thing about Barack Obama. He didn't try to get on that mic after that one. But she did not make it about her. And she refused before when somebody asked her that question when they were being interviewed. She said, I'm not going to address that. And she took this opportunity to put it at his feet about his racism and how he's been racist. And I think that was perfect.
It was perfect. She did a great job. Let me tell you, I didn't know how she was going to be able to contain herself, but she was able to. I mean, it was like taming a wild elephant. It was like this guy was not going to shut his trap, but in some ways, I guess it works to her favor because again, it showed how he has no self-control.
He has no
none.
He's
worse than a child.
It's not so much, well, okay, so there is no self-control. She had all the receipts. I was like, is she secretly a Virgo? Like, I need to go check her chart. Because that woman had all the receipts. I was like,
Virgo,
okay.
Gemini, something.
Right?
She came with her receipts tonight.
But he's clearly not competent. Right. He's not fit to be president. He's just not. Like when she laid out the story about
being in anyone's company.
Right. Like the fascination with dictators and it's all about himself. I don't see how people are like, I don't know if I can vote for her. Then so what are we doing here? Like, what are we really like? Any intelligent person, any semi-intelligent person could look at this debate and say, wow, that's a huge gap there in terms of, competence and who is going to be a better leader for this nation.
Right. And I think people who are saying that, I want to hear more. She has been talking about her policy forever. Like she just got here, but she's still been talking about her policies, right?
For 3 weeks.
And what they need to ask themselves, and I'm putting this out there to Black people, Black men in particular, any Black woman with any crazy talk that they want to do. What is it that you're looking for? What is it that will have you tear somebody down who is obviously more qualified? And even, listen to Robert Kennedy. Oh, she's more qualified than you'll ever be.
Yes.
With her skills, the amount of education, the background, the experience that she's had. She's been a civil servant.
Yes.
All of her career. She has had positions, and she has, like you said, she's more qualified than any of the male presidents that we've had, period. So why do you just want to, are you trying to fit in somewhere? What is it that you're doing? We have some serious questions to ask ourselves, and we need to make sure that we're focused on the right thing and stop destroying ourselves over foolishness, because we can't be self-destructive anymore. We got to come out and remind people we need to vote blue up and down that ticket. And you know, you ask them, why didn't you do something in the 3.5 years? What they should have asked him is and what I want people to remember, the pandemic started in 2020. That was the last year, the last few months of his administration. He had all of the 3.5 years prior to that.
Yes.
As president. Why didn't he do it?
Yes,
Why
right.
didn't he have a border bill? Why didn't he do all of those things? You were the president.
That's right.
Ask
And not
yourself
that
that
when he took his first, when he took his first 2 years as president, he had a Republican Senate and a Republican House.
Yes.
If they wanted to pass bills on borders, they could have done it then. But again, we all know that the Republicans do not want to solve the border crisis,
No, they don't.
because every year, every election year, they will get on and say the same thing. The border is being overran by immigrants.
And they never want to deal with the actual the crime statistics, where the ones that are out there, the ones that the group they identified are the least violent, the ones that are committing the least violent crimes in America. These people, you're not addressing the ones that are out here doing these homegrown terrorists. We have homegrown terrorists. They're American.
Right.
They ain't come across terrorism. They came across a state border, the interstate. They came across a county border or something, but they didn't come from out of the country. And I think that people, I've been thinking about this a lot. People keep harping on 2020.
Yes.
That was a final year. Those years before, when he did nothing.
He did nothing for 2 years.
He did nothing for all of that time. Always on his golf course.
3 years.
Biden at a beach. I haven't seen Biden at a beach. I've seen Biden with standing on picket lines with union people, still meeting with union people. He's still doing that now as a president. But you had all of that time, and anyone that's out there, you want to question what she had not been the president for 3.5 years. She's been the vice president and doing her job. And we need to talk about the things that they have in place that you want to destroy. But however, we need to concentrate on the fact that this man was a president who did nothing.
Who did nothing.
For 3.5 years. The pandemic was not his entire administration.
Nope.
It was the latter end. And we got to understand, people need to understand that and stop letting him off the hook for doing nothing for 3 years.
There you go. Well, guys, so should we end it here? We'll be back together tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is our Wednesday. We have a special guest coming on. This was great. I'm so glad you guys joined in. We had a full audience here. Our community was here. We had new folks coming in. If you're new to our community, make sure you should I put my little thing up here?
Yes.
There we go. Let me get my little banner going here.
Right, I have to tell you and Gwendolyn and everyone else, y'all look, I did good because I'm not the one. My nervous system shoots into action and things like this. So this is like one of my most anxiety kind of things to do and watch are debates, and I would say debates and award shows. Those things really get me, but I think it's so important that we show up because it's a critical time in our country.
Yes.
And
is.
People early voting starts in Pennsylvania next week.
Yes.
It's critical that she keeps talking to Pennsylvania. It's critical that she keeps talking to everyone. But it's so critical that we keep doing the work of being, even if we're not calling and stuff, if we're showing up on these platforms and circulating information, letting people know when their voter registration deadlines are in their states, encouraging people to read their ballot. As long as we show up, we're doing something that other people aren't doing.
That's right.
And I think that's important. But I'm gonna tell y'all, my husband knows. He's like, I know he's probably proud of me too. I left the whole day.
I told you I had bubbles in the beginning. I was like, oh, I gotta calm down. I had to take my vitamins. Well,
But
you know,
maybe
I
because,
get,
well, you know,
you
I
know,
mean,
you know how
yeah.
you are. You know, you're like, you know,
former
so
debater here, man.
yeah,
Have
I
your
feel
notes
like
ready. Be write your notes down. Be like, okay,
I look,
okay, okay, I got it.
I had
but
to
really
write my
not.
notes and
Once it
questions.
started, I was fine.
Yes.
And then what made me feel even more comfortable was we had real moderators
Yes.
who did kind of check him and let him say, you didn't answer that question, or you were like, yeah, but you didn't answer the question. I think that's what needs to happen. And
Mhm.
so, and then as a person who, like, I wasn't on the debate team, but in history class, I debated. And
I was in a debate scheme,
I
and
left
this
some
is why I
people in
love it.
tears. I left some people in tears,
Miss
but
Lee.
only through facts. It was all through facts. It was
Always.
Always
never
facts.
meanness, all facts.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to defend that point, just like she used facts. Yeah, they're gonna do some fact check and say, oh, it wasn't 400 million, it was $1 million, whatever it was. But he ended up getting a lot more money. You know,
That's
he
right.
got money from his father because that father disinherited Fred.
Right.
Well,
right.
they also remember they posted that in the Wall Street Journal. I think it was 2 years ago
Right.
about how he is the first richest person. He's the
President.
first rich person to lose as much money
Right.
that he gained in an inheritance.
Now he did not discredit that he's been filed for bankruptcy 6 times.
6
He never
times.
said
Bankruptcy
anything
6
about it.
times. And he says in his speech, I want to do for America what I've done for my companies.
We're like, wait,
And then those
bankrupted.
idiots this week, they applauded. Yay, yay, yes, bankrupt us like you did your company. Ding dongs.
Yeah, I think
Ding dongs.
I definitely got comfortable with the environment because that was important for her. And I told my husband, I did not realize how short she was, what her height was, because she is a person with a big personality.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know she was 5'4". And you know, he told them not to have anything for her to stand on. But she didn't need it because she stood on her morals.
Yes.
She stood on her values.
Right.
She stood on them facts. That's what she stood
Come
on.
in there owning the rooms, man.
She
Come
came
in there
in.
owning the rooms.
I
And she's
loved
like-
it. I loved her. I love what she did. I think she came prepared.
Yes.
She was able to answer every question. He was just baffling. He kept using the same script. He kept saying the same thing over and over again about the border, about the people, about the criminals, about America being a vicious place.
They're eating pets.
Oh yeah, and I just couldn't believe that he went there. They're going to eat your pets. They're going to eat your dogs.
That's because that's what his people put out there. You know, they had that AI generated stuff with him in it. His son put out a whole thing with him surrounded by cats.
Cats
now
and
he's
dogs.
looking like the cat man. Let's talk about cat women. His vice president said call about cat woman. He's a cat man.
Ooh.
But he went with that, even though they put out they know it wasn't true. Like the man said, that's not true.
He said it was a hoax. The man said it was
Right.
a hoax. He wasn't even, he meant it. He wasn't even, he was just joshing around this person, whoever this guy was, saying they're going to eat our cats and dogs. I mean, the thing was, the guy said, I looked over across to my neighbor's yard and there was a cat hanging from a tree that they were about to eat. Now, I mean, who would even believe something so crazy?
How big was this cat? This cat wasn't enough big to need to be hung up from a tree to be gutted. That it shows you who he is. That's why, you know, when she mentioned Hannibal, I was like, gonna mention sharks. That'll set him off. She should have mentioned those sharks.
The sharks, right? The sharks.
Girl Club Jazz says JD Vance actually said the Haitians, Ohio, are eating people's pets during a recent rally, and this idiot goes and repeats it. It's priceless.
But you know, JD Vance is unhinged.
And now we need to figure out what is going. Well, we don't need to figure it out, but we understand that JD Vance is crazy as well. These are crazy people. Weird.
And let me tell you, to people who may see this and are considering voting on the other side. as you were concerned about whether Kamala Harris as a woman would be the president if something happened to President Biden, you should be terrified that if something happened to the orange man,
Yes, right.
that
Right.
J.D. Vance, who is totally unhinged and think women should be barefoot and pregnant, and that grandmothers and great aunts should be babysitting,
And that
could
also,
be your president.
and then if you don't have children, you don't have a right to a vote.
Right. You know,
Right.
that's what you're talking about. He would take away your right to vote because you don't have children. And so think about that. Roll that over in your head and understand that these people are not for you. He has already been on videotape promising his billionaire people
That's
that I'm
right.
gonna give y'all more tax breaks. Y'all y'all a bunch of rich people in this room, and I'm gonna make sure you keep your money, and that you're not gonna have any money. And tariffs, those tariffs will come to you as a price hike. You're gonna pay for that.
They don't, but they don't understand. And that's the crazy part is we all know, we all learned this in economics. We all learned this in economics 101 is that a tariff is a tax on the people.
Right.
Because it costs more. The reason why someone uses a tariff is to stop the sales of that product in their country.
Right.
Because they bring up the price of that product so that people can't afford to buy it. Therefore, that country who has products in the country will then say, you know what, we're not going to sell that product in that company, which doesn't hurt the government of that, like America.
Right.
It hurts the customer.
Right.
Because the customer may want that item.
Right. And that's what people have to understand. That's what he would end up doing to you. And the economists have done that work.
Yes.
And I love that she mentioned Warden because she
That's
knows
right. He went to school there.
And she knew that he would take the bait, right?
Yes, he took the bait again.
He took it. He took it. He swallowed that fish hook.
He
reeled
kept
it in.
taking the bait.
So let me ask you all a question, because he said something twice
Yes.
about this Russian pipeline that's giving oil to Europe.
Yes.
And saying Kamala Harris and Biden are responsible for blah, blah, blah. But of course, he didn't want to actually talk about that they have increased the production of oil in the United States. He didn't want to deal with that. She said it. The oil production in the United States is at an all-time high because they wanted to be able to help the people.
Yes.
And when people talk about gas prices being low, you got to remember when it was that low, that was in 2020 when we weren't driving.
That's right. No one was driving.
No one was
Supply and
driving.
demand.
The supply and demand.
No demand, so the supply was cheaper, right? So we have to be realistic, but also give the Biden administration credit because they increased our oil production in this country, and they have kept our gas, even though it's higher, yes, but they've kept them at this level because of that. Because it would be much higher if they had not opened up those pipelines in America and increased the oil production in this country. It would be higher.
Yeah.
But
so,
not only that, but
they
did it. They did it also to help the Europeans to compensate for that oil line that was not working any longer because of the war.
Right.
So they needed to compensate the Europeans. That was part of the NATO agreement, as in as they backed the
Ukraine.
Ukraine. Duh. I had a
I know you said cut the crane, so I figured
Ukraine. I got the crane out, but I forgot the U. But the oil, the Europeans needed to be assured that they were going to have to pay, try to keep those prices down in Europe. People don't know, and
how
again,
high the prices of the countries,
and America has the lowest gas prices in the world. Most countries, the gas is let me just go back, $8, $9, $10 a gallon, in most countries,
right? And then the Girls Club just said about the prices in Atlanta just went down. Our prices per gallon is fluctuates around $3.10 to $3.39.
Yeah, we're pretty cheap. And they said by November, before the rush, before the holidays, that
Right.
the oil prices, that should say gas prices, should be below $3. That's
Yeah.
what economists are saying. They just said that, I think, yesterday.
And it all, and then the fact that he's saying, as soon as I get to win the election, I'm going to end this war. How are you going to end the war, sir? Who are you going to talk to? And if you have that much skill, why didn't you end it now?
I want someone to challenge him. He said, he said, I will do it before I'm elected.
That's what he said.
He said, I'll do it before I'm elected. I will bring peace to Ukraine and Russia before I'm elected.
Well,
let's see
he's
him
good
get
for
to work.
talking stuff.
He's
Like,
just talking. We all know
he
he's
asked
just
him.
talking.
He asked him about how they would go about doing the deportation, and he couldn't answer that. I mean, first of all, let's think about how big that is. That everybody have to go around like showing their papers and stuff. I mean, that's asking for a lot. But he doesn't have any plans.
I just saw the email and I had to jump on. I'm sitting there watching the coverage on between MSNBC and CNN. So sorry I'm late.
Never late, sir.
You're
never late.
You're right on time, Chris.
Loved it. Loved every minute of it. I'm living for it. She handed him his ass on a platter. It's what we needed. She baited him just enough to get him. I'm sorry, I missed the conversation.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Tell us what you think, what you feel.
I mean, she did everything that she needed to do. She gave what she believed in. She gave her apologies. She called him out. You're a convicted felon. She did everything. Ronald and I sat there and watched this, and I'm just sitting there clapping in bed and just having a good old time.
Well, we had a good time here. The audience everyone, this community came out, showed up. I think there was probably like 26 people that were here at one point. And so everyone showed up. We still have people in Instagram. I don't know why y'all in Instagram. Y'all need to come on over to the Touch Base Daily on YouTube. You need to come over to Ron Lewis Photos on YouTube so you can be a part of the conversation. We love that you're over at Instagram, but you got to come over for a better experience.
One last point, and Ron even pointed out, this man had one leg to stand on the whole entire thing. Immigration. That made absolutely no sense.
No sense.
It didn't matter what the question was. He kept running back to immigration. I mean, how
and
do
not
you
only immigration, but he was saying that they were going to kill people, they're criminals. I mean, he was
insane asylum.
He said the same exact thing that he kept saying when he came down the escalator.
Where he completely lost it, Ohio, eating dogs and cats.
That's what we talked about. Yeah,
I was like, okay, now it's over for you, sir.
But Chris, what I liked was that she set it up, right? She said, you're gonna keep hearing him talk about immigration.
Yep.
She said, I'm letting you know now. He's gonna keep talking about it.
And he's gonna be telling lies.
And I love the fact that she set it up. So, and he couldn't help himself because he doesn't have anything else to say. He doesn't have a policy to talk about because he can't talk about Project 2025 or Agenda 47, which is the same thing.
And I love that she talked about that. She put it on. I mean, it's been on the national stage, but to have her say it in this public forum where everyone is watching, I thought that was smart. Let me tell you something. The debate prep that she did worked.
Yes.
She got everything out there. She was able to just talk about all the things she needs to talk about. But then at the very end of every little time that she talked, she just like dangle a little carrot. And he fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker every single time. He can't help himself.
Right.
He's undisciplined.
Right.
He's undisciplined, unhinged.
You are no.
Look at his face. He just looks all the time. Like
all the time.
That's not even a face a mother could love.
But Chris, he knew he couldn't call her nasty, right? They told him, "Don't you dare go in there and call her nasty."
Listen to me. I was honestly waiting. I was waiting for him to get so angry he's going to leave the podium and try to go over by her.
I thought he was going to do it. I thought he was going to do it at one point.
Let me tell you, he knew better because Kamala is not Hillary.
No,
that's right.
Everybody else he's come up with. that little woman would have taken those heels off. He would have wished she was still standing on his side. He knew better than to try that.
She would
Like,
have
go
taken
learn
her
today.
heels off.
Oh. So the breaking news, my husband say Taylor Swift just endorsed Harrison Walls.
There you go. I knew it was going to come after the debate.
So
I
let
knew it
me
was
tell
coming.
you all one thing. Remember, did you see the video where Kamala went to the spice shop in
Yes.
Yes, very good.
So you know that that particular owner is very outspoken.
Yes.
So they put all of these bad Yelp reviews out for them. The Republicans and the MAGA people put bad Yelp reviews out for him. Honey, go to his site. It's Penzy, PENZY''S. Go to their site and read that letter.
Wait,
that
Brian,
he-
what are you
Oh
doing
my
in the
gosh.
hospital?
Coming on live. But
Oh,
go
you
and
really
read
are
the
in the
letter.
hospital. I thought you were
I
joking.
thought you were visiting
No,
someone in the
oh,
hospital.
Snap.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm in the
Did you
hospital. I
not
thought
see
you
the
were joking.
message?
son.
I
Yeah.
saw
You
him
went to
say
the
he was in the
message board?
hospital, but I didn't know he
said-
was in the hospital.
No, he said he was in the
Yeah.
hospital.
He said it. How
I
you
thought it was
doing,
like a
sir?
metaphor.
He said, I'm going to be here for a while. He said, I'm gonna be
I
here
didn't know
for
it
a
was
while.
real.
But go to that site
Brian.
and read the letter that owner posted
Yes.
to the Republican people.
Oh
You
my
gotta read
gosh.
his letter.
Brian,
Brian,
it's
how
so
are
good
you?
to see you. How you feeling?
You're on mute. You're on mute. There you go.
Right, there you go.
I'm good as long as I don't move.
Well,
but
well, I know it's too much to go into, but we'll talk offline. But if you want to,
Right.
but I didn't know you were in the hospital. I thought you
You
were like visiting someone in the
Ron, you
hospital.
Ron, you didn't read that?
I missed it. I
She didn't
missed some.
read.
Sometimes these things go by so fast on the.
I know.
I missed it. I mean, I
Look, Gwendolyn
saw
missed
that
it
you
this time,
mentioned
and
the
Gwendolyn usually sees everything.
Well, I saw
Yeah.
that he said he was in the hospital.
I saw that
somebody-
too.
But I didn't think it was like, I mean, like in this kind of, we talk a lot. We use like
Yeah.
creative language. So I thought, oh, okay. I didn't know you were really in the hospital.
Seeing Trump put him in the hospital.
Did you?
Go ahead,
he
Brian.
got so excited about this debate tonight.
Yeah,
You know he wasn't gonna miss this debate unless he was unconscious.
and I did fade for a little bit. The medicine.
Well, we're
I
glad
gave
you
me,
see. We're
but
glad to see you okay.
Yes.
Wasn't gonna miss this, and so yeah, I don't want to focus on me, but some of the things that at least we can talk offline.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be here. Maybe I don't know. Another day, hopefully.
Okay.
Was here yesterday, today, tomorrow.
Right.
A couple of things that stood out though.
People saying get better. They say feel better soon.
Yeah.
There you go. There's
Yeah.
that love coming in. So just want to
Yeah,
make
we
sure.
love
got
you,
that.
Brian.
We love you, Mr. B.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
But I'm gonna take you off the screen. You know why? Because I'm gonna be a good friend and say go get some rest.
Well, he put in the chat that his heart rate went up and the nurse came to check on him.
I saw that. I was like, what? I didn't.
I was in there,
Oh
Bruh.
my God.
You know you need to chill out.
You need to chill out. So we're gonna let you get some rest, and I will talk to you offline.
Yeah. Well, I
And
just
when
want to stay focused. You know, my thing.
Yeah.
Like, this is she did what she needed to do. He looked more incoherent than ever, which I believe, in my opinion, was masked in the first debate because there was so much focus on President Biden
Mhm.
that nobody really paid attention to the orange one, and just I saw that D. Tuggle, he put in there what I was thinking when he was like, well, you had 3 years to do so, and I'm like, you know why she didn't do it, you ignorant orange monstrosity? She's been vice president.
She's the VP.
Oh, so yeah, that just yeah,
Look at you.
She did what she had to do, and she needs to just stay focused. And we all need to stay
Yes.
focused. I obviously I'm not out knocking on doors, but while I sat here and I grabbed my phone and made another donation of $5, whatever you can afford.
Right.
It takes pennies, nickels, dollars,
Right.
and whatever we can. Do not take this for granted that she's got it in the bag.
Absolutely.
So that's my little word of word of encouragement. Good night. I'm gonna rewatch it. Probably.
All right.
No, don't rewatch.
Did you
Go to
rewatch it?
sleep.
No, not right now. But you know,
Go to
they-
sleep.
No, I'm
He
not saying
will,
right
though.
now. But
He will. 'Cause I
whenever-
can tell he's tired. I
And
can
those,
hear it in your
that's
voice.
those drugs talking.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Those are the drugs. That's a medication. Come on, I
I
know
see him go-
medication talking.
He's groggy.
That's that
We
medication.
love you.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
look at the commitment to this community. Look at that. I mean, the man is in his hospital bed, reaching out and talking about the
Lord.
debate.
I
Man,
saw
we
my
love you,
brother
kiddo.
Chris. I saw brother Chris come. I'm like, okay.
Chris, you
I
see
Get
gotta-
some
Chris?
rest. Get some rest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go let those drugs
All
do
right.
what they're supposed to do.
There you
Yeah.
go. Do so. Okay, I'm taking you off the air,
All
sir.
right. Thanks.
Bye,
All right,
Mr.
Brian.
B.
Brian,
Bye,
love you.
Mr. B. We love you.
Those drugs will get
Wow.
them. Those drugs.
Yeah, that's right. You can hear those drugs going on. You're like, oh, come on.
Depending on your
Go,
surgery.
go back and read our go back and read our check. He did say what happened to him.
Oh,
He
he did.
Yeah, it's in our
Yes, he
chat.
did.
Shoot,
Go
I
in
got
our
a long
in the
chat
chat,
to go
Ron.
through.
Go in our other chat, Ron.
Oh, okay.
You have to say it publicly, but he did mention what happened.
He said what it was, but go in the other chat.
Okay.
I don't
But
know
you
how
know,
I
you-
missed it.
It's just so much, even for the community that's in here now, just the commitment of everybody in the comments they've been making as doing the debate and
Yes.
all of the posts that people have been doing around this election. We just have to stay focused and keep it going.
Keep
because
it going.
we know there's so much more for us to talk about and do, emphasizing, yes, the presidency, but we also need the House and Senate.
Mhm.
Because listen to what he said. Well, once you get to be president, she won't be able to do it either. Why?
Yes.
That's our key that should tell people the only reason she won't be able to do it if we do not, as voters, deliver that House and Senate. That's the only thing that would keep
We
her
gotta
from
get,
Yep.
yeah, we
you
gotta
deliver
vote
that
blue
House and
all the
Senate,
way.
she'll be able to do it. And they'll be able to control that. Even though the Supreme Court is crazy, they'll be able to control that Supreme Court if she gets that House and Senate. They'll be able to do something.
Yes. Yes.
We gotta do our job. Stay
We
focused.
gotta do our job. We
do
gotta
our
stay
job.
focused. We gotta stay focused. But guys, I'm gonna let you guys get some rest. I will see you all in the morning. I'm
Right.
gonna search this thing to find out what happened to Brian. I'm
And
scurrying through all of
Can
this
you
right
just
now.
text him
And
or
do
like
not,
send him a
do not
message?
blame. Look, and everyone that has to be at work in the early in the morning, do not blame us for that.
Yes, exactly. But I'm so glad
Go to the
Mr.
other-
Chris
go to
came
the
on
other
board.
chat, Ron.
We love you, Chris.
Right.
Oh,
You're
you're
muted.
muted.
No, it's funny. I saw it. I tried to stay off my phone. I only posted a few things while I'm in the debate, like some of the reactions to Harris.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there watching CNN, like kind of going through stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta jump on. And I'm sure you're gonna have a continuation of this tomorrow. So if
Well,
you
you know
are,
we
if
are.
you're-
You know, well, tomorrow we have
Emparo.
Emparo. She's our
oh
guest.
right.
So we'll be diving into that. But Thursday we will dive into more of, obviously, I'm sure all the numbers are gonna come out on Thursday. As in, did she get a boost? Who got a boost? Who did not get a boost from this debate?
Oh wait,
No,
hold
you
on.
said-
One last
you
comment
said
before I get
$5.
off.
What's your
The
comment,
fact-
Chris?
The size crowds when she baited him and he was so like upset about that. I got the biggest crowds. Like, sir,
Yes.
like what is it with these numbers of people? Oh, they're
He's
all fake
obsessed.
people. You're bussing people in and you're paying like, boy,
People-
bye. Bye.
People not, people not walking out of him.
That's
They
what
got video.
that's what Obama said.
Obama. He's obsessed with crowd size.
He's impressed with size, period.
Yeah.
Compensation.
Some other discussions there. I should
There
talk
lots
to
of-
Stormy
look, there's
Daniels.
some- I won't tell you all what I told my husband about size and him.
That's what I'm talking.
Well, listen,
Was at the
there was
root of his
statue-
problem.
there was a statue a couple of years ago that went around from state to state where they had a life-size statue of him with his genitals out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you remember they had the baby, him in the baby diaper.
Yes, I
that
remember the
too.
baby diaper. I
The
remember the
balloon in
baby diaper.
But they were. I said, if you ever want to know, Ron disappeared. The size he put that mouth. The size of a man who is insecure,
Yes.
who is not great in all areas of his life,
Mm-hmm.
and is deficient in parts
Like Lori.
It shows up in their behavior.
This doggone freaking Apple mouse.
I worked in middle school as for an assistant principal for 10 years. His behavior is a middle school child.
He's child. He's
and
a
he's also
child.
a narcissist. So she got him good on that one. She could bait a narcissist.
She got a lot of good baits in.
Yes.
She got a lot of good baits.
He felt
also,
every
okay, we
one of them.
also I think it was Kelly A also says she was in the ER yesterday. So we're keeping you in our prayers, Kelly.
It
was
was Kim Kimmy.
Kelly. It was Kim Kimmy?
Kimmy Kim.
It was Kimmy Kim?
Yeah.
Okay, it was Kim Kimmy. Yeah, okay, there we go. Kimmy. We're
That was
praying
her.
for you.
Yeah.
Praying and thinking of you, doll. Okay.
She's speaking
Each
now.
of you for $5
she
for
is?
coffee in the morning. Jazzy said,
I don't
I'll
need the
send a
coffee.
cash
I'm a
app.
soldier, okay? I do bottles all the time. I'm fine. Trust. Get my 5 miles tomorrow morning. It's
That's
gonna be all
right.
right.
I got my 2.5 miles in this evening. I attempted my 4 miles, but I was like, oh, I just want to go home.
And we can all go with new energy tomorrow.
Yes, I feel much better now that this is over. This is the first stage. Now the next one was the next debate is not going to probably be another debate between these two.
They probably won't.
And it should not be.
And it shouldn't be. No, it
It
shouldn't
shouldn't
be.
be. She shouldn't
After
even
this,
agree to
she
anything.
did what
else.
she
Like,
needed to do.
I did
She
what
did
I
what she
needed
needed to do. However, the next debate will be the VP debate.
Right.
Yeah.
And everybody go and give your $5, whatever. Let them see a bump in her donation. That's what
Yes,
Yeah.
$5 would be good. I'm going to send $5. I'll do that too. Yes.
And people just
Guys, I'm out.
stay focused.
Okay,
stay woke.
buddy. Tell
All
Mom I
right.
said hi. Bye.
Oh, he's already asleep.
Okay.
My family's still awake. I think my granddaughter watched it with her mother too. Because I was like,
Anyway.
your history didn't teach you, didn't say watch this. Why not?
To be continued on
To
Thursday.
be
This
continued
panel.
on Thursday,
Yes,
because you know we're going to be
Thursday.
doing good this panel. Guys, I'm going to let everybody
All
go.
right.
Guys, have a great night. Thank you
Good
for
night,
joining
everyone.
us over in Instagram. Again, make sure you come over to our YouTube channel. We would love to have you a part of our community. We meet every day at 10 o'clock a.m. And so catch if you can't be with us live, catch the repeat. And we do that. We're here every day at 10 o'clock from 10 to 11-ish. We are. And but we are going to have our guest speaker tomorrow. I guess not guest speaker, but we're going to have a great conversation on
Right.
travel photography
Okay.
and learning while traveling.
Good.
Okay.
I'm gonna be taking a trip, so I need to hear it.
You need that photography tip from
Yes.
Amparo.
All
Okay,
right.
guys.
All right.
Guys,
Good
have
night.
a good night. Thank you so much for joining us. Later.